This is Family Law with Lillian, where legal experience meets heartfelt guidance. Presented by the Legal Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Legal Podcast Network. I'm your host, Nancy Gregory. Today, our guest, Lilian Adu. She's a family law lawyer with the Adu Law Firm based in Sugar Land, Texas. Lillian, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Nancy. Very good to see you again.
Now, remind our listeners how long you've been practicing family law and how you got into it in the first place.
Okay, so I've been practicing for about 6 to 7 years, maybe a little more. I got into it by just simply feeling like it's the right place to be. I can't point to a particular day or time when this happened, but I know it's something that happened over time. Just based on my experience, based on my background, and knowing that I wanted to help people in this way.
You've been practicing, you said 6 to 7 years, but your experience in law goes much longer than that.
Well, yes, it does. Prior to being a lawyer, I was a paralegal, and my job was helping lawyers. So I just enjoyed being in that environment, if you say so, if you will call it that. It's the, reviewing depositions. Most times we are required to organize and put depositions into some kind of order for later use at trial or other, motions hearings. What I would do is that I would actually sit there at my spare time or even at home and read deposition transcripts, which, I found it fascinating. And so I knew that the interest was there from a very long time.
Now, family law encompasses many areas. What does it include?
Oh, family law includes everything that affects families. But some people tend to narrow it down, and at Adu Law Firm, we have excluded some areas because, of course, there's just so many of those areas that we can manage. And when it comes to family law, we begin from the very foundation of it. Every family begins with two people who decide to get married, and that means that in that period of deciding to get married, they may wish to have agreements around that. They may have what we call prenuptial agreements, which is agreements that they have before coming together. There are also agreements that they can have while they are together, the nuptial agreements. And people don't think about that very often, which is where husband and wife can actually make certain decisions that affects them, especially relating to the property that they own and deciding who gets that property and how it should be done. That is not necessarily a will. It's different from a will. It's an agreement, for example, that one party's separate property would now be converted into community property. So as long as they are, and Texas is a community property state, which, as you know, means that anything that is owned and purchased during marriage belongs to both parties, regardless of whose name is primarily on the property. So those are the kinds of decisions that can be made in a marital relationship. So anything relating to that is family law. Additionally, of course, if you just follow the progression of humanity, when two people get married, there are often children that come to, make that family even larger. So yes, family law includes issues relating to children. It includes custody of the children in the event that becomes an issue. There's also deciding whether a person or who should pay child support in the event that becomes necessary. It's not always a necessity in a family, but sometimes it is. We also need to talk about paternity. Those things are also in family law. If there is ever a question on who the father of a child may be, or whether or not, where a person contests the fact that they believe that, where a person believes that they're not the father and they want to contest that fact, that is also all part of family law. So, of course, we talk about property that are acquired in the family. We talk about insurance, health insurance. People don't realize that is also part of family law, because someone has to be responsible for the upkeep of that, especially for the children, even if the adults do not want to get into that for their own benefits. So Those are things that are encompassed in family law. We talk about wills, we talk about estate planning, we talk about guardianship in the event that there is a reason for that. We talk about, orders relating to medical care. Those things can come into family law. So it's a really vast area of law that affects anything relating to family.
Now, when it comes to divorce, like there's also divorce mediation. Do you find that there's an increasing number of families or couples that are going that route?
Yes, it is increasing for a good reason. It's also sometimes just the best way to make a rather difficult situation less difficult. So, in mediations, what typically happens is that two people have some idea of how they will want to divide up their property, or how they want to make sure that both parties have time with the children that are involved in a divorce situation. So it's often easy to spot people who are likely to benefit from mediation. It's important to know that mediation helps, it does not hurt. Some people may think it might prolong the process, and depending on the personalities involved, it can. And other times, most times, it is a help to both parties. What it entails is that, the two people have conversations with their lawyers and the mediator, who is not on either person's side. The mediator is like they go between one party and his or her lawyer, and the other party and his or her lawyer. And just by negotiating back and forth, we're eventually able to come to terms that both parties can agree to and turn into what we call a final decree of divorce, or sometimes just an order that is affecting the children. It makes the whole process a lot easier.
A lot easier, but it doesn't always work out in that situation that's even an option. So when it comes to actual divorce, when we spoke before, you had mentioned how there's a lot of misconceptions or beliefs about divorce, and nobody takes it lightly. But from your experience, it's not the end of the world necessarily, is it?
No, it isn't. And it comes down to how a person is willing to view the divorce process. Some may, in fact, believe that it shouldn't happen, and it could be as a result of long held beliefs. It could be as a result of religious beliefs. It could be as a result of many other things that a person has come to accept in the process of becoming adult and becoming part of the society. But I would like to indicate that it's sometimes also just a beginning. It have to, sometimes when things have to break, they do have to break. And it takes mending that things, or creating a whole new foundation, so that both parties can now build a better life, hopefully, based on what they've learned from the prior life. So divorces allow people to start afresh, but to do it a little better with experience.
It's a breakdown of the system of marriage, not necessarily you want to protect the individual.
That is correct.
There are situations when someone might not feel that they can get a lawyer because one partner might control all the finances, or their property is in the other spouse's name. What do they need to know?
They need to know, especially in Texas, that the mere fact that finances or property is in the name of one party to the marriage does not make it true that that party owns that property. So long as it was, any funds were accumulated, or property was purchased or owned during the marriage, that is not property that was even given by gift, by will, or just a separate property of some kind. As long as it was during the marriage, it is community property in Texas, with the exception of showing that maybe one party owned that property before they got married, or with the exception of showing that it was a gift from uncle who passed away, something to that effect. But in most cases, you find that the property was accumulated during marriage, which makes it community property, and it belongs to both parties, regardless of whose name is stamped on it.
When dealing with divorce and child custody, what must parents know?
Put the child first if child custody is an issue. Now, if the child will be harmed by being with the other parent, make sure that it's not based on emotions only, because courts want to have hard evidence, and this is how you protect the child. So have evidence of the fact that a child may be harmed by leaving that child alone with the other parent. Uh, as far as divorces, it's always easier to step in knowing, having some idea of what you would want, what you would need to feel better about the situation. You're never going to have 100% in most cases, but at least have something at the back of, have a goal, just like anything else we do. Have a goal and step into that goal and discuss that goal clearly with your representative and with your lawyers, and that would make the situation a lot smoother.
The detail the courts want to know about what the needs of the children are is quite, they go into quite a bit of detail, do they not?
Yes, they do. So when it comes to children, you have to look at the age of the child. Is the child less than 3 years old? And what can be done in that instance? Does the child have special needs? Is the child just a regular thriving child? What is the distance between where each parent's leave, one parent leave to the other parent? What does that mean for a child? Imagine, for instance, if there's a court order, some people say, well, okay, we want to have a situation where we share custody 50-50. Well, that, in theory sounds like a good idea. The child would get to spend time with both parents, and everything would be great. But consider the fact that sometimes that means that what the child will spend 3 days here, 3 days there. Now, as adults, we're not very good at knowing exactly where our things are. Imagine a grade school child who would have to deal with that on a weekly basis for the duration of their minority age. That can be very, very difficult. And you have to factor in the how close do the parents live to one another? Do they live in the same streets? Well, if that were the case, the child may be able to stop by mom's house or stop by dad's house on any given day and pick up their homework that they've forgotten. But the same situation wouldn't apply, for instance, if one parent lives 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away, 40, 45 minutes away. So they may be in the same geographical location, but the distance does play a part. So then you have to think about what the child wants. What does the child thrive under? Children need structure more than anything else, and the law in Texas recognizes that. So when people are making decisions as to where children should be, structure should be a very important aspect of that.
Is it more complicated when a child has special needs?
Well, yes, of course it is, because now you have to. It's hard enough when children do not have special needs, and then when they have special needs, it can be on a spectrum. It could be mild. It could also be severe, and both parents have to be willing to be on board on what that child needs. So what ends up happening is maybe one parent is keeping up with what the child needs because they are used to doing that, and they can easily mend themselves if the situations change. And you have one parent who is not able to do that, or who is not willing to do that. And of course, all of that will impact the child's overall health. So it's very, very important to know that there are many factors that the courts will consider when making decisions regarding a child, especially if the child has special needs.
When you're representing a client, what do you want them to know about how you're going to approach their case?
Every case is as unique as the individual that comes into it. Yes, they may all be divorce cases, and yes, they may all be child custody cases or child support CPS cases, name it. The category may all be the same, but the substance of the case really depends on the unique situation that that person is facing. So every case needs to be looked at from that perspective. And we need to understand, we try to understand what a client would need in their own unique situation in order to manage life and build that new foundation that they need to move on in their lives. And so we evaluate you based on the law, but remember, your case is different. You are unique, and we will treat you from that perspective as well.
Before you said you wanted to be their ally. What do you mean by that?
So it all kind of ties in, doesn't it? So you can't represent someone, for example, if you don't know them. That's very important. And we take that to heart. We want to know you. We want to know what is your story? What's brought you to us? How can we support you through this process? How can we make things better as best as we can? You can't do that without getting to know them. We ask questions. We want to understand. We take notes. We conference. We follow up. And as things change in their lives, we continue to follow up because talking and talking and talking is the way we get to the heart of what matters most to them. And when we do that, we can stand in their shoes, and that's the only time we can provide appropriate representation to them.
Compassion and advocacy, very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What aspects of practicing law do you find the most rewarding?
It's hard to pick one. Let's just say that when I first started, it was, just like I said, reading through the position transcripts. That was everything to me at that point. But I found that as, I grew and went to school, certain things started to change. We might be just arguing the values in a particular case we discussed in law class. That was always great. Just debating because that's how we get to the truth. That's how we serve our community. That's how we get to the things that matter, is being able to look at things from many different angles and just have several perspectives about them. And that's how we get to the truth, because the truth doesn't change. The truth is the core. It never changes. So when we get to that, then that's where change begins. So law is humanity. Law is community. Law is the beauty of living, is justice. So all of that matters. It is everything from reading the law books, getting the cases, debating the law, representing clients, actually being able to influence someone's life with this thing that I care about so much, knowing that it can do more outside of myself. That is invaluable. And the courtroom, I recall the first time I had the honor of being in a courtroom. Just the way the seats were set up were enough to make me happy. So I don't know what you take away from that, just the setup and just knowing you can make a difference. Your voice matters.
Your voice matters. Lillian, thank you for joining us. Remind listeners the best way to connect with you again.
832-780-9005 or at audulawfirm.com.
Lillian Adu, family law lawyer with the Adu Law Firm in Sugar Land, Texas. Until next time, I'm Nancy Gregory.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos like this one. And be sure to follow us on social media.